Happy Friday, March 14th, here on the Just Baseball Show. You got Arm Layton and I'm Peter Apple. And today we finish up our division previews, ending with the National League East. We're going to look at the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, the Marlins, and the Nationals. And it is all brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. A lot of our fans of the show and of course, on social media and in the Discord and everything like that have used bonus code JustBaseball on BetMGM to take advantage of the first bet offer where you get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first wager loses. You might ask, how are they already taking advantage? On some MLB futures. We've released a bunch of them. So you use the code, you wait out the bet, and if it loses, you get it all back in bonus bets. Again, up to 1,500. But remember, gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 years or older. Terms and conditions apply. Aram, we were talking about what we should talk about before we get into the National League East preview, and there's not a lot. Bobby Witt Jr. thankfully avoided injury. Jeff McNeil did not, unfortunately, but we're going to talk about that in the Mets section of the NL East preview. And Phil Maton signed with who?
The Cardinals, yeah, whatever. They'd been talking about reliever help, right? There you go. Circle the wagons. Here we go. It's all in now on the Cardinals season. Now, Jack and I did such a long segment on injuries the other day that I don't want to even talk about the almost injury that was Bobby Witt Jr. Just thank goodness he was able to fight through a 96 mile per hour fastball and not break a bone in his hand or anything. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited because this NL East conversation is always going to be a little bit longer anyways. It's always
Yeah.
one of the more competitive divisions.
I was just very happy, selfishly, for Bobby Witt Jr. because I bet him 8-1 to lead MLB in hits. But I'm sure Royals fans were
Oh,
holding their breath.
that's
I mean,
that
when
season before it started. If something happens there.
we talked about the Royals in the American League Central preview, and Jack kind of said it was like they're one Bobby Witt Jr. away from this offense not being very good. Now, I'm not willing to go that far where they just sink into the fourth spot in this division immediately because they do have that great rotation. They do have an improved bullpen. They did add Jonathan India, but Bobby Witt Jr. is coming off a 10-win season. So whenever you lose someone like that, like even the Yankees with Aaron Judge, it's still so thank God Bobby Wood Jr. is healthy. But let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. And just again, another reminder for anybody who hasn't listened to our full division previews. We go through the lineup, we go through the rotation, we go through the bullpen for each team, talk about some strengths, weaknesses, X factors, and then at the very end, when we're done going over all the teams, we'll do our predicted order of finish. So let's again start with the Phillies, who won the division last year, winning 95 games. The infield is going to look like first base, Bryce Harper, second baseman, Bryson Stott, third baseman, Alec Boehm, and shortstop Trey Turner. At DH, we're rocking with Kyle Schwarber. In the outfield, Nick Castellanos, Max Kepler, and Brandon Marsh. And JT Realmuto is still the catcher with Rafael Marchand, Edmundo Sosa, Cody Clemens, and Johan Rojas on the bench. It's still a really good offense, but there's just something missing. It feels like a little bit because I look at the top with Turner, Harper, Schwarber, and I feel really good about it. But then you start to get into the middle of it. There's some age here. It just doesn't feel like the elite of the elite Phillies offense that we're used to, even though it's the same players. Do you share that same feeling with me, or do you think I'm overthinking it?
Um, a little of both, because like I definitely hear you, and then I think the reason why part of it is like, okay, well, I'm a little bit more optimistic in terms of the back end of the lineup is I think Brandon Marsh, I probably am a little bit too much of a Brandon Marsh believer at times. And I'm probably already sharpieing in Max Kepler to be better than a 94 WRC plus when like he still has to go out there and do it, right? It wasn't like he had the most robust free agent market ever. I like the signing for the Phillies. They found an opportunity to pick him up and it wasn't too expensive. But if he's a 95 WRC plus again, I don't think that would shock anybody. And if that happens, yeah, this lineup kind of tapers off because at this point, Castellanos kind of is what he is and doesn't give you a ton of value defensively. And yeah, with Real Muto getting older as well, and kind of you're just seeing that age curve tick downward. And Stott was extremely disappointing last year. I think there's a very real scenario where 5 through 9 is a frustrating stretch in that lineup. So I definitely think that's fair. I just like for whatever reason I'm already like penciling Max Kepler in for a 115 WRC plus, and it might be a little ambitious.
I think that's creeping into my mind when comparing them to their division rivals, right? We look at the Braves offense and we say, all right, who's the fourth best hitter on the Braves, even without Ronald Acuna Jr.? Michael Harris, Ozzy Albies, Matt Olson, Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley. Like you just continue to go. And who's the fourth best hitter on the Phillies? Alec Boehm?
Well, the fourth, fifth, because you'd have Turner, Harper. Yeah,
Schwarber.
actually, no, fourth. Yeah,
Yeah.
boom. Yeah,
Boehm versus Marcell Ozuna or Matt Olson.
yeah, yeah. And the fifth, I think, if you go to the fifth spot, it becomes even more polarizing.
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of at on the Phillies. I think it's a good offense. I think Bryce Harper is going to be great. I think Trey Turner is going to have a better season this year. Schwarber's still going to get to his 40 home runs. But outside of that, like, I'm not a huge believer in Bryson Stott. Offensively, I think the glove is great, but I think maybe he's going to be a league average hitter this year. Brandon Marsh, maybe. Max Kepler, maybe. Nick Castellanos, maybe.
They want to cut down Real Muto's playing time, understandably so, because he's 34 and has been catching for ever like huge workloads there too. So you imagine you're eating into that workload a little bit as well. It's still a really good lineup because you've got Turner, Harper, Schwarber, and Bohm. But are you getting first half Bohm or second half Bohm? Like what is he going to look like? He had a nice season cumulatively, but was largely on the back of a really good stretch. Those are the things I'm definitely a little concerned about. I do think Marsh, given the year that he had last year, he was banged up a little bit, but if he's healthy, probably finishes close to 3 wins. That's huge for them. I still think Johan Rojas can grab the short side of a platoon and maybe help out this outfield a little bit because he was just clearly disappointing last year offensively and still like more than a WAR producer there, a 1.2 F WAR, despite being putrid offensively. I think he'll be a little bit better, but yeah, my concern really is just the age curve on some of these guys. If it just continues, who's going to carry this offense? It's Harper for sure. It's Schwarber's homers, but what you get from Trey Turner becomes huge, and I think Trey Turner could still be the guy that fights that off and has another great season. We've seen kind of flashes where it's like, okay, yeah, he's all the way back to Trey Turner, and then you see flashes where it's like, is this just the new norm? Which is still a really good player, but not a superstar. It's a tough gauge, and I think the lack of defensive value doesn't help the case either. That's why I'm
Yeah.
glad they added Kepler, who is just a solid defender in a corner to offset Castellanos. Marsh is going to go get it in center, but your best infield defender is your second baseman. That's where it's a little tough.
I'm curious, Phillies fans who are watching this on YouTube, let us know. Are you a little bit disappointed that the only offensive piece that you guys added was Max Kepler? I know that they were certainly in the market for Luis Robert, trading with the Chicago White Sox. I know they've of course added to the starting rotation, so I'm not really talking about the entire offseason.
They were
I'm more
shopping Bohm.
yeah, I just want to know I want to know the how are we gauging this offense,
Yeah.
Phillies fans? Let us know in the comment section below because that's really the only weakness on this team. Because then you
And
go, oh, go
yeah, I was
ahead.
gonna say just before you get to the rotation, like it can be slightly disappointing relative to our expectations, and they can still win the division because of the rotation. Like they're still gonna hit. They're gonna be an above average big league offense. They have a chance to still be elite, but we're like we said, it's you have to squint a little bit maybe to imagine it being as elite as it's been maybe the last few years.
And also for most teams that we talk about, we run through the lineup, we run through the starters, but then you or Jack bring up a lot of solid prospects that could be coming up to help this team. On the offensive side, like we're going to talk about Andrew Painter in a minute, but is there anybody in the farm that could supplement an injury here?
Aiden Smith is still a little too far away, so I don't think he would be able to get up there too soon, like maybe late in the season as an infielder for them at second base or whatever. But yeah, in terms of the bats, they don't really have a ton in the upper minors. Maybe Gabriel Rincones, who could be a power bat in the corner, but Odds are even a 95 WRC plus for Max Kepler is going to be more reliable. Justin Crawford's still too far away. So to answer your question, not really, not anytime immediately, soon.
Yeah, it's funny. This team finished fifth in OPS last year. They might be the third best offense in the division as we
Very
go through.
possible.
And I think once we do, everybody listening is going to be like, yeah, the Phillies offense, not that great, but damn it, the rotation is fucking awesome. You got Zach Wheeler at the top with Christopher Sanchez, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, Jesus Luzardo, with Andrew Painter coming up the pipeline. I still think that this is the best rotation in all of Major League Baseball. I'm going to take them against the Mariners. I'm going to take them against a lot of teams. The Yankees were up there, but after losing Garrett Cole, I think it's the Phillies on top of the mountain because you still have Zach Wheeler. He's 34 years old. He's going to be turning 35 soon, but he finished second in National League Cy Young voting last year. You still have Christopher Sanchez, who, really broke out last year as a almost a taller Ranger Suarez clone who throws harder, and he's maintained that velocity in spring training. He looks fantastic. Aaron Nola just brings his lunch to work every day, and it's 6 innings and it's 2 or 3 runs. Guy's just been nails eating innings for a while now. Ranger Suarez, again, was kind of dealing with some injuries last year. He seemed that Christopher Sanchez kind of took that leap as the Phillies official three while he kind of dropped to the four. But when Ranger Suarez is on, this is a guy who can maintain ERAs in the ones for months. That's how good he can be. And then come playoff time, the guy's absolute nails. And then if Jesus Luzardo is 80% of what he was in Miami, he's the best fifth starter in Major League Baseball. If
Yeah.
you get 100% of Jesus Luzardo, he could be the second best pitcher in this rotation. That's how good this stuff can be. Any analysis here? I mean, it's just awesome.
I love that the fifth starter, so to speak, in this rotation is like the volatile one, where
Yeah.
because it's like a fun roll of the dice where if Luzardo is healthy and pitching at his 2023 levels, like you said, that makes this rotation so undoubtedly the top in baseball, especially with Kirby potentially missing a little bit of time. But even then, like it would put them right over the Mariners. If he's struggling, it's okay. He's your five, and you have Andrew Painter waiting in the wings, or if he's hurt again. So I felt like the Phillies were the best team to take a chance on Luzardo,
Oh,
given
yeah.
his injury history and the volatility. Whereas like the Cubs would need him to be a reliable three for the entirety of the year for it to really make sense for them. For the Phillies, of course, you never want to give up assets and then not have it fully pay dividends, but you're rolling the dice on a guy that would be your five or could basically, as you said, become the best five in Major League Baseball. But you have another guy waiting in the wings and Painter, who you don't want to rush. You want to build up off of TJ, but you'll have plenty of time to do that as you get more clarity in the rotation. As you also said, Suarez got hurt. Guys are going to go down here or there. The fact that you are able to plug in arguably the top pitching prospect in baseball, that puts them in a really good spot where you got to feel great about the rotation and the rotation depth.
I want to dive into Andrew Painter a little bit more because you just came out with your top 100 prospects. We're going to do a full episode on that on Monday. Of course, you can listen to deeper analysis as Arm and Jack go 100 to 81, 80 to 61 on the call up. They're doing 5 different episodes. All of them are like an hour and a half, really diving into each individual with tons of analysis. So make sure to go check that out. But again, on Monday, we're going to do the top 100 here on the Just Baseball Show. Andrew Painter comes in at 11. Really obviously great prospect. Like you said, one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. He is recovering from Tommy John surgery. Like, what do you expect from Andrew Painter this season? Because when you rank your top 100 prospects, it's not the best young players for 2025. It's for beyond,
Yeah,
obviously. So,
exactly.
but
And
just for this season, what should Phillies fans expect?
I think they're going to be cautious with him. I think that's definitely clear. He's so valuable, and I think some sort of a version of the Paul Skeens ramp up, I think would make a lot of sense because they did get the ball rolling on it in the Arizona Fall League where he started to pitch 2 innings, then 3 innings, and then the final time he was out there, it was mostly 20, 30 pitches. Last time he was out there, it was 50 pitches. The velo slipped a little bit, but not from like a concerning perspective. It was just like endurance perspective and just getting his feet back under him. And I'm sure that they've been working hard to just get him back comfortable again because the way that it timed up with his injury, like he went from basically hadn't thrown in regular season game settings since September of 2022. So like, it's a long time ago, man. So he's building back up, but I think by the time we get to June, they're going to have him throwing 4, 5, 6 innings. And I think at that point, he can be a guy that plugs right into that rotation. You want to see if the feel for the changeup is there. Like there's some things with TJ that when you're coming back, it takes some time to find that feel again. But the fastball slider combination is absolutely elite. And he can ride that to big league success. But I think they're going to want to ease him in innings wise and also see if he can find that feel for the changeup again, which he started to show in the fall league.
So let's say the rehab doesn't go quite as planned, or at least it just takes him a little bit longer. I'm just thinking of a hypothetical here just to talk about Mick Abel. Like, is that another arm who could contribute this year to the Phillies rotation if Painter isn't quite ready yet and an injury happens in their starting five?
I would hope, but I'm getting pretty skeptical on Abel at this point. I think he was maybe the most disappointing pitching prospect last year, or at least one of. I think he's destined for a move to the bullpen, to be honest. And I'd almost imagine they try somebody else that throws more consistent strikes before they go to like a Mick Abel out of the into the rotation. I almost wonder if they'd go Seth Johnson, who I know it wasn't great with, but go with him or somebody else because Abel's problem, man, like he's just nowhere near the zone. He had a strike rate below 60% last year. So I think they ultimately may move him to the bullpen at some point this year.
Hmm. Well, overall, still, I think that this is the best rotation in baseball. And then, of course, just that starting five, but with Andrew Painter coming up, and who knows? Maybe Mick Abel can bounce back a little bit this season and he's able to contribute at least slightly. Let's talk about the bullpen. I mean, they did lose Jeff Hoffman, which is really tough, but again, they go get Jordan Romano, old Blue Jays closer who's coming off a tough year. But they gave him $8 million, and he's supposed to be the closer this year. But let's say he struggles a little bit. They got Orion Kerkering, who is, again, about to turn 24 years old. Incredible breaking ball. They still have Jose Alvarado. Unfortunately, Matt Strom just went down with some shoulder inflammation on March 5th. I'm not exactly sure of his timetable. I don't know if you have a little bit more clarity on that. But even without Matt Strom right now, it still looks like a pretty good bullpen. But again, with Matt Strom, it would be a top 10 bullpen in Major League Baseball, even though they did lose Jeff Hoffman. Just going down the line still. Jose Ruiz, Tanner Banks. They brought in Joe Ross. They have Kyle Tyler. And then whatever Taiwan Walker can give you in that.
Yeah, just go clean up
Yeah.
when it's a blowout or whatever. I think they're hoping Strom will be back within the first month or two of the season, so it won't be like he's missing a huge amount of time. And then they have some guys in the minors, and I'm also excited to see if they just bring up and if they need a reliever and see what it looks like. Moises Chasse, who they got in a trade in that Sir Anthony Dominguez trade, Soto trade as well, and with the Orioles. He has one of the best fastballs in the minor leagues. I think that's a guy that they could plug into the bullpen and potentially he could just overwhelm hitters if they want to try that and move him up a little bit more quickly since he's already on the 40 to be protected from the Rule 5. But I do think Romano is going to bounce back and Kerkering has closer stuff, man. Like
Oh, yeah.
we've been a little hesitant to just like pencil him in as like a closer for them, but because he's young, but he's had experience now. He's thrown in the playoffs. Like when he's been at the big league level, it's been as advertised. And Alvarado was a little bit of a disappointing year last year, but still a guy that it's very comfortable pitching in the ninth. And if he can just find a little bit more consistency, that's a guy I'm definitely still trusting at leverage. So I do think it dips off from there, but I also feel confident that if they need a reliever arm, like Dombrowski always goes out and gets like that's the area that he always is as proactive as any GM in baseball at addressing. So I wouldn't be too worried about that during the season. And they may want to just see maybe what Mick Abel can do in there and some of these other pitching prospects that have great stuff that they may ultimately move to the bullpen. But I'm not too worried about them, leaving the bullpen unaddressed and not doing what they need to do in that regard.
And because the Phillies have such a luxury at their starting rotation, a lot of these guys are going to be going 6 innings, right? When we talk about the New York Mets, for example, another team where it's going to be hard to find a guy who can consistently go into the 6th inning. So that bullpen for the Mets, it might be better, but they're going to have much more innings under their belt. Like I think there's a chance that this Phillies bullpen has the lowest amount of innings pitched of any
Yeah.
bullpen in Major League Baseball this year because
Yeah.
the front four for the Phillies, all of them can be trusted to go 6 innings. And if Luzardo is good, he can easily be trusted to go 6 innings. So they're really only going to need, on most days, the 7, 8, and 9. And that's what they have right now in Alvarado, Kirkering, and Jordan Romano. And then when Matt Strahm comes back, if they had one more good arm, like when they moved for Estevez at the deadline last season, that's all really this bullpen needs.
Yeah.
And then they just need a couple of fillers. And if Taijuan Walker can be okay as a swingman, I mean, I don't expect that, but I'm saying if he is okay, this is a really good bullpen too. But
Yeah.
there's also, there's context involved with all these bullpens. How many innings are they going to throw?
And the fact that they're going to be protected from high usage is huge. I think it's a great point. And Strom coming back will be very important. You put Strom into this bullpen, you feel a little bit better about just the reliability of it and the proven arms, at least, to just feel a bit more comfortable there. But I still think this bullpen can be good enough. And then I do think they'll address it. But this is a bullpen of all the bullpens that we're going to go over in this episode, probably the least important because of the rotation, as you mentioned, and how many innings these guys are going to throw, hopefully, this year. I mean, you're talking 200 innings from Wheeler, 180 and 2/3 from Sanchez, 200 from Nola, 150 still, even as he was injured from Ranger Suarez. Like, they can eat innings with the best of them.
So before we continue, through this division preview, I also want to do another shout out to the Discord. The last time we were talking about the Discord, we were celebrating that we just got above 100 members. Now we're at 225 and growing. It's been incredible. And my dream for it was that every single channel is popping off, whether that be MLB prospects, where you're hosting live Q&As every day, right? It seems like we were
Yeah.
going to talk about, maybe doing Q&As a couple times a week. You're answering questions every second. So am I in the betting spot. We also got our college guys in the college baseball. We're talking MLB draft, right? We're talking trading cards. We're talking everything. Fantasy baseball. There has already been a 30-team dynasty league started up just in the fantasy baseball section of the Discord. And right now, you can join for just $5. It's going to be $5 for the first month, then $10 opening day. We're trying to build the greatest baseball group chat ever, and I think we're off to a great start, Arm. It's been such a blast.
I was up till like 1 in the morning just talking prospects last night. It's been a lot of fun and sending like crazy Christian Campbell swings in there, explaining why I'm a little worried about his swing, stuff like that. But it's been really fun. It's a really cool community, and it's been everything I was hoping it would be. Especially as people on Twitter/X are just teeing off on the top 10 and just not reading it. Having a community of people that actually read the write-ups and want to talk and just like have discourse and just have fun with it has been a blast. So it's been great for my mental and it's been really cool to be able to connect with the audience and everything. So we would love to have you in there.
And we're going to do plenty of giveaways soon, whether that be our own merch or baseball cards, or when we partner with a sponsor doing giveaways there. So make sure that you join before opening day. It's an absolute blast. Again, the link is in the episode description. All right, let's talk about the 2025 New York Mets. I've been called a Mets hater, Arm. I did take the Mets under 92.5 wins. The market did agree with me. They are down to 90.5 again. We're going to talk about,
Whoa.
the all the win totals in another episode, but I just wanted to come out and say that because Mets fans already don't like me. But I think I'm fair in my analysis of the Mets. And the reason I'm fading the Mets is not this offense. This team is going to rake. The infield looks like at third base, Mark Vientos, shortstop, Francisco Lindor, first baseman, Pete Alonso, and second baseman, Jeff McNeil. Unfortunately, Jeff McNeil just is going to be out 3 to 4 weeks with an oblique injury, so we should see some Luis Angel Acuna. Brett Beatty is also projected to make this team, so we'll talk about some of the younger guys. In the outfield right now, it looks like Jose Siri in center. Newly acquired Juan Soto in right field still pains me as a Yankee fan, but damn, he looks good in this lineup. Can't deny that. And then in left field, Brandon Nimmo with Luis Torrens starting at catcher right now because, again, another injury to Francisco Alvarez, who broke his hamate bone. That's the bone in your hand. and he's going to be out probably 6 to 8 weeks. So they've already been hit with the injury bug on offense between Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez. I think plugging in Luis Angel Acuna right now is like, I mean, I don't want to say an upgrade
It could
because
be.
Jeff McNeil did find it in the second half. That bat looked so much better. In the first half, it was like a 70 WRC plus. In the second half, it was like a 156. So Mets fans wanted him to build off that and hit the ground running. But now they get Luis Angel Acuna, who in just a cup of coffee looked fantastic for them. Ronnie Mauricio could still be an option there too. I think what's going to hurt the most is at catcher. And it's not just because we expect Francisco Alvarez before the season to take a step forward with the bat, maybe find some consistency because it's been a lot of up and down. Looks great, looks terrible. Let's bring that into the middle and let's raise the floor a little bit. But it's also the way that he helps this rotation. The defense took such a huge step up. So that's a loss. The bat's a loss. But still, looking at this Mets lineup, especially that front five with Soto, Lindor, Nimmo, Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, they're going to rake.
They're gonna rake. And it's kind of a similar conversation though on the back
Yeah.
four, which you can have with a lot of teams, but this is we're talking about tier one ball clubs here, right? So what do you get from Jesse Winker? If it's a 118 WRC plus again, great. If he's a 764 OPS, that's all you really need, especially platoon him for a little bit, so he's going to be even more productive against righties. But what is Jose Siri? I know they don't need him to be a ton, offensively, but he can't be what he was last year. He can't be striking out 38% of the time.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping Luis Angel Acuna builds on what he did last year, but he was not good in AAA prior to that call up. So he's a confusing player. He was a top 100 guy for me before. I like him a lot. I still think he can be a very productive player for them because he's a menace on the base paths. He's going to be a valuable defender at multiple spots. He's a plus defender at second base for sure. But I do agree like that losing that pop at the catcher position as well, because even if it is a little bit of a roller coaster with the offensive side of things with Alvarez, you still can see a guy that can hit you 30.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas looking at Winker, Siri, Acuna, and then Torrens or whoever, the only guy that you can really dream on having, I think, well above average offensive season is Winker, who you're platooning, and it's going to be your DH at a 120 WRC plus. So that's where I could see it tapering off a little bit. But the top has a chance to be so freaking dominant that it may not matter. And then if the other guys fill in and do what they need to do, maybe Brett Beatty starts getting reps at second base if they ever needed that. Or, but the fact that Beatty's just even in the fold as well and looks like he can potentially contribute this year. Like he looks a lot more comfortable at the plate. That helps a lot. But I mean, the idea that Lindor MVP runner up, Soto perennial MVP candidate, and Pete Alonso, who has a chip on his shoulder, like that could be one of the best, if not the best, three-headed monsters in Major League Baseball if everything goes the way that Mets fans hope.
I know there have been plenty of talk about Juan Soto this offseason. So saying that he's really good, everybody says that, but I think this guy has the potential to lead MLB in homers. That much power, I think, could be in Juan Soto's future. Now, it's tough to say because it's also his first season with a new team. You're living up to a $765 million contract. We already saw that with another Mets big time free agent, right? In Francisco Lindor's first season with the Mets, he wasn't what they envisioned. Mets fans were upset and deservedly so. They just signed a shortstop to a huge deal. They wanted him to be an elite all star immediately. He wasn't. But then he finished second in MVP voting last
Yeah.
year. Like he's going to continue to get better. But Juan Soto hit 41 home runs last year. And when you look at the difference between Woba and ex Woba, like he was arguably by that stat the unluckiest hitter in Major League Baseball. Barrel rate way up. He's always had amazing swing decisions, but he's hitting the ball harder than ever, making the best swing decisions he's ever made. I know he was just at Yankee Stadium and now he moves to Citi Field, but knowing he got a little bit unlucky in that department, this is a guy who could be a 45 to 50 home run hitter this season if everything works out. And I don't think that that's impossible. Like that's so they're losing a little bit of power with Francisco Alvarez. It's tough to just pencil in another 30 home run season or not another. I know he only hit 27, but it was in 111 games. He's just a young player in Mark Vientos. So it's hard to slot that in. But with Alonso and Soto, I think that duo is going to combine for the most home runs of any duo in baseball this season.
Ooh, I like that. And I mean, Lindor's hitting homers too. Like that's the thing
Yeah,
too. He's getting into power again. Like, and for Lindor, he was making the leap from Cleveland to New York. Soto's going from New York to New York. I think that guy's unfazed when it comes to
probably.
expectations
Yeah,
and whatever. But I hear you. Like there may be an adjustment period. I think the biggest X factor, aside from can Vientos duplicate what he did, is Brandon Nimmo, who is banged up. He was banged up at the end of last year. He's banged up right now, getting injections or whatever. It's injection season in Major League Baseball right now, but not
yeah,
the HGH kind. It's plasma and cortisone, apparently. But with Nimmo, if he's hurt and he's not really consistently impacting the game the way that he has in the past, and it was a little bit of a disappointing year last year for his standards, like that is a huge variable here because we've seen Brandon Nimmo be 5 WAR Brandon Nimmo, and then we saw him last year, which isn't a liability at all, and he'll be fine. But a 224 hitter who was a 2.7 F4 guy. So if he's closer to that 5 win guy, I think you can feel really good about this top half of the lineup, and it does extend it a little bit. But it is similar to the Phillies conversation here, though the production, especially with Alvarez out, if Vientos takes a little bit of a step back, and if Nimmo's a bit banged up and similar to what he was last year, the lineup can taper off because I don't have any faith in Series bat. We'll see what happens at second base when Acuna is there or McNeil comes back, and then we've got a backup catcher in the fold right now.
yeah. At least they do have some outfield depth here, right? We talk about Jose Siri. Is he striking out too much? Talking about Brandon Nimmo with some injury concerns and just a downturn in production last year. They have Starling Marte and they have Tyrone Taylor still on the bench, who are definitely good bench pieces.
Taylor might be better than Siri, to be
Yeah,
honest. I get trying the Siri thing a little bit, but like Tyrone Taylor probably ends up taking over that job.
he has a higher floor. I think Siri has a higher ceiling, so
Yeah.
might as well just see what you can get because Siri, when he's on, like he's Jack's favorite player. I mean,
He's MVP candidate to
he's hitting
Jack.
jacks, he's stealing bases, he's a good defender, and then
Elite. He will catch everything.
but then sometimes the focus in center field goes a little awry. Like he's made some weird plays out there, and
Yeah.
then that leads over to the box where he's swinging and missing, and it looks like Javier Baez, and you're like, oh my God, this guy is completely unplayable. And then some weeks it's like, is this just Byron Buxton? Did we get this player? So
Yeah.
that roller coaster is definitely going to be fun for Mets fans, but at least you have a high floor, right? You get your vanilla ice cream
Yeah.
with Tyrone Taylor. What should Mets fans expect from Brett Beatty? Probably the hardest question to answer in the history of baseball.
It's actually up there. Um, I given how high I was on Beatty when he was a prospect, I'm never gonna fully give up on this guy. But I do think this is at the very least now with what we've seen from him and the Mets just being in win now mode. Maybe you don't even want to stash him in AAA anymore and just have him mash there and be okay with him not getting as regular of at bats at the big league level. But I mean, if this is a guy that's playing 2, 3 times a week, I think he's one of the better bench options in Major League Baseball because he's going to be able to hit the ball hard consistently. The approach looks good. It was just a matter of hitting it at the right angles, and it was a lot of ground balls last year, and it just started to chase his own tail with mechanical adjustments. I like the changes he made. I like where he's at, and he's looked great in spring training. He's just been hitting the ball hard everywhere. I don't know where he fits in. Obviously you have a perfect backup for Mark Vientos. Maybe you get him some reps in other positions to just see what it looks like. He's not the worst athlete in the world, but they've been getting him reps at second base. So I do wonder if Luis Angel Acuna is struggling or if they like how Beatty looks at second base, he could end up just getting the reps there. That gives you the runway to see what you got and see if you can build on these spring training improvements. Instead, you have Luis Angel Acuna is a super utility guy, which is great because he can play center, he can play short, he can play second, he can play third, he can play both corners. And if Beatty looks good through the first 4 or 5 weeks before, or 3, 4, however long it is before you get McNeil back, then you have a decision to make, but it's a great problem to have. So I would love to see Beatty hopefully in the next couple weeks get a lot of reps at second. If he looks comfortable there, like this is the opportunity to see what you've got. Because if not, when are you going to get a chance to get Beatty regular reps at the big league level?
Hmm. So overall, where do you rank this Mets offense in the division?
I mean, Soto, like alone, I don't like to put too much value into one guy, but like
Wait, but
it's
before you answer the question, I love that long pause you just had. I mean, it's just like, where are we at here? Because I think it has more upside than the Phillies, but I think the Phillies might have a higher floor just because the lineup is deeper, right?
yeah,
I'm talking about the guys, after Harper, Turner, and Schwarber. They aren't bad hitters. They're just not great hitters. Like a lot of them are going to hover around the 100 WRC plus. I look at the bottom of the Mets lineup and I say, if things don't go right, you're nearing an unplayable level of being a bat, right?
yeah,
So, but the top end is so good, and I think it. Mark Vientos is the big X factor, right? You talked about Brandon Nimmo, but it's like if Mark Vientos is a 30 home run hitter for this
yeah,
team, or maybe even more.
changes everything.
And, maybe he's hitting 250 or something like that. But there's also, I mean, Mark Vientos struck out at a 30% clip.
Hmm.
Like there are times there where he goes through stretches where he's striking out at a 35% clip. So if he's not able to be consistent this year and maybe doesn't get to the power as much, that's where you can see the Mets offense probably go to third place in this
Yeah,
division. But I think if Mark Vientos is good, it's easy second.
I think second. Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
I'm at as well.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the rotation because here's where the trouble lies. Because I think the bullpen is really good, but let's talk about this Mets rotation. So right now, Kodai Senga is your ace, followed by Fangraphs has David Peterson as the two. I think Clay Holmes is going to end
Clay
up being
Holmes
the
is
two.
two. Yeah.
He's looked so good in spring training so far. David Peterson coming in as a three. You got Tyler McGill. You got Griffin Canning. You got Paul Blackburn. And if you're wondering why did he not say Sean Manaea, unfortunately, oblique injury has sidelined him. But we just got some good news that he should start throwing actually today. We got the report Thursday, March 13th, that he will start throwing. Basically, the report says he's starting over spring training. So I think a reasonable timeline for him is that he's coming in the beginning of May, or at least
Yeah.
it's probably going to be 4 or 5 more weeks till we see Sean Manaea. And then who's the last guy? Frankie Montas.
Yeah.
He's dealing with a similar injury to Luis Heel. Timetable kind of unknown. You get that 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing, and he hasn't really started up, so not really sure. But you're hoping maybe he returns late May. Again, this is the rotation right now. My one issue with it, Arm, is I see the talent, right? Like Kodai Senga, when he's on, is excellent. David Peterson, when he's on, is excellent. I expect Clay Holmes to be really, really good. Who's throwing over 150 innings? Do you know Kodai Senga has thrown 13 seasons between the MPB and Major League Baseball? He's thrown over 150 innings 3 times.
Yeah, that's a problem.
166 in his first season, but he is coming off an injury where he only threw five. Like David Peterson had hip surgery, looked better, but you look at the underlying metrics and it's like, all right, it's still a 4.5 expected ERA. Clay Holmes looks really good, but he's never thrown over 70 innings in a season in his life. I mean, maybe dating back to college or high school, maybe he did there, but in major leagues, he hasn't. So Reynaldo Lopez had even thrown 188 innings before for the White Sox when he was a starter. Then he threw 135 last year. We shouldn't expect much more than that, but that's okay. Not to say he can't pitch like a 3-4, but again, it's going to be a lot of 5 inning spurts. Tyler McGill, Blackburn, like Sean Manaea is the only one, but he's also coming off the most innings that he's ever thrown. His season high was 179 when he was pitching back for the A's. He threw 200 if you combine the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's a lot of workload, and then
And
we're
he
already
faded at the end. I think that's part of the reason why he's hurt right now.
faded at the end, and also he's dealing with an oblique injury. So Mets fans are going to say, don't worry about any of that. Mets pitching lab, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea from last year. None of it matters. It matters to me. It matters to me.
I that's why I kind of like the Griffin Canning pickup. I think they're gonna take his generic pitch mix and help him just be a more productive five if needed. And he threw 172 innings last year. So
Yeah, he did.
if it was at a 5.19, you figure if with some tweaks, he's a 4.5. That's your innings eater if you need. David Peterson looks gross. I'm watching him spring training. He looks disgusting. So if he can replicate what we saw from him at points last year, but I think the injuries are the big concern with Peterson. He's been banged up plenty in his career. Holmes will maybe do the Seth Lugo thing and end up become going from reliever to innings eater. And if that happens, they're in a great spot. But to your point, like he has to do it. So I actually do think this can be one of those. And it's funny because you think about who's in charge here in Stearns, and like it feels like this could be one of those classic Brewer rotations where like on paper it's not that good, and then you look at the numbers and they're making it work and they're solid. I think that's exactly what is going to happen here. But a huge part of this is going to be what do they get from Manaea when he comes back? Does he look like Sean Manaea for the duration of last year? And I think he will. And when he's back, that rotation I think starts to look pretty formidable because I would put Manaea in the ace spot with what he did last year. Sanga's your theoretical two. Holmes is your three. With what we've seen stuff wise, that's a good three.
Oh yeah.
Peterson is your four. That's a good four. And Tyler McGill's your five. It's not the sexiest on paper, but that rotation can put up some solid numbers. And then they've got the depth with Montes whenever he comes back and Canning as a fill-in innings eater. I can kind of get behind this rotation, but to your point, I could also see where it gets derailed a little bit. Sanga hurt again, Peterson a little bit banged up. Holmes doesn't make as smooth of a transition, and then all of a sudden it's like, who are your reliable arms?
That's just kind of where I'm like, I understand where you're coming from. It's the trust in David Stearns, and I understand it, but I just think at some point it might go a little bit too far. They're talking about, the pitching lab with what they were able to do with Sean Manaea. Like, Sean Manaea has been a pretty good pitcher in the past. Luis Severino just in 2022 with the Yankees was awesome. He came off a tough 2023, but then he pitched to a 3.91 in 182 innings. And it's, as Mets fans believe, that it's like they found some dude off the side of the street
Yeah,
with
and
these
it's not like
guys.
every pitcher can just say, "Let me do what Chris Sale does" and start crossfire delivering and have it work. Like
Yeah,
most guys would be spiking the ball or like drilling people in the head. Like it just happened to work for Manaea.
I guess my main point of the argument is I have to see it work this season to
That's
just
fair.
give the Mets and David Stearns the benefit of the doubt. Because I
Totally
agree
agree with that.
with the Brewers, like when David Stearns was there, it was Corbin Burns, Brandon Woods,
Yeah,
or Freddie Peralta too.
yeah,
Like that's a
yes,
little bit different here. Now I know that, it takes a lot to get those guys, but at the same time, they don't have those guys right now. And they don't have, but to be fair to them too, right? We talk about prospects coming up. Brandon Sproat is one of the best pitching prospects in baseball, but can he help them this season? Because he's not really been pitching through the ranks, right? He got really crushed when he went out to AAA last year. But again, it's about maturing, and I'm sure he can help them this year. Blake Tidwell, the stuff has looked good in spring training so far. So they have guys coming up the pipeline. I just the names on the roster just aren't doing it enough for me, especially knowing that if Griffin Canning is your innings eater, like that's an issue.
yeah. Well, so I agree with that. I guess my perspective is I could see it happening, and I know you can too. But like, I understand wanting to see it happen first, but it's not too hard for me to talk myself into this rotation making it work. I agree that we have to see it happen because there's not a lot of proven commodities here. I'm glad you mentioned Sprout though. Just another iron in the fire here, and that's the one thing is I do think there's going to be some variance with some of these guys, but they do have a fair amount of irons in the fire. Sprout's not ready yet, but come June, July, that stuff, man, he can be an asset for them. And if they're making a playoff run and the rotation is settled, they may just throw him in the bullpen because he's got a fastball that can touch 101, 102, that splinker that doesn't move too differently than Paul Skeens. It's obviously not Paul Skeens' splinker, but it's pretty darn disgusting. A couple breaking balls that are gross. Like that's a guy that, again, you can try. If everything's going poor, at least there's other options to just funnel it in there and try. But I agree with you. Like, got to see these guys do it before we just say this rotation is going to work for sure.
So I'm down on the Mets rotation, but I'm not down on the Mets bullpen. I think this is a very strong bullpen. You still have Edwin Diaz at the top, one of the best closers in Major League Baseball. AJ Minter got injured last year for the Braves, had surgery, but he's back now, and that guy's your number two. Got to be excited about that. Jose Budo has established himself as a really solid swingman, but also can pitch in high leverage. Like this
Yep.
guy is a weapon in the bullpen. And Daniel Nunez is not even listed on Fangraphs, projected bullpen for the Mets in 2025. I think he's the fourth best reliever in this pen. That dude is fucking disgusting. It's 99 at the top. It's a great breaking ball. Like that guy is someone to watch. Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, just solid bullpen arms. Like even Ryan Stanek can pitch and leverage. And Danny Young, Max Kranick, we'll see. But
Granick
again,
looks good.
there you
Grant.
go. So
So this
this
is
is a
this is
good
where
bullpen.
this
Yeah.
is where you can give Stearns the credit before
Oh
you
yeah.
even see it. Like the
Yes.
bullpen, you could just tip the cap and say he's going to find motherfuckers. And Kranick looks disgusting. That is going to be their. The Brewers have the random name all the time. This is going to be the Mets like random name this year that is just gross. His fastball data is wild. And so far in spring training, he has dude, he has struck out. It's only 27 plate appearances, but he has struck out 30% of batters and walked zero. So that's 10 Ks, zero walks so far in spring training. The fastball is riding through the zone. I think that's gonna, and they don't need him to be a high leverage arm.
No.
If you have a guy that is getting tons of swings and misses in your middle relief spot, like a little tweak with Stanek can get him where he needs to be. But I agree with you. I really like Budo as a seventh inning guy slash swingman, but I think more of a seventh inning guy because they have the more options in the swingman role nowadays. And Minter's a really good bounce back candidate. But if it doesn't work with Minter, like if he's banged up again, I think Kranick could legitimately be a guy that plugs in there. That's how good the fastball looks.
Do they have any other young arms coming up the pipeline that could end up helping them in the bullpen, right? We've talked about Sproat. We've talked about Tidwell. Maybe they can be sort of a swingman type. Maybe if Jose Budo really establishes himself as the seventh inning guy, or maybe, AJ Minter is not healthy all year, so he would be your eighth inning guy. Like, is there besides Sproat or Tidwell, or maybe that's the answer, are there guys that can come up and help in the bullpen?
He's not young, but they do have Huascar Brazoban, who they traded for last year, who like has had stretches where he's
Yeah.
good, and then he was not good with them. But he's been a reliever who's been decent through stretches. I do think that's a guy that could end up helping them out a little bit if needed. I'm looking at like who else they have Genesis Cabrera, which is pretty funny. But prospect wise, I do think Tidwell is probably their best bet as a guy that they could plug in and stuff wise could go out and get outs.
Good bullpen. I would say borderline great bullpen, great offense, and I'm saying it right now, I think it's a below average starting rotation. I think it's a fine rotation, but again, the one reason again I'm a little bit worried about the Mets is we talk about the one-run game rule. And this was a big point of emphasis for me for the Miami Marlins when we took them as my biggest bet ever, and they were historically great in one-run games. And sometimes it can be explained away with a really good manager and a great bullpen. I'll give you an example. The Cleveland Guardians went 26 and 19 in one-run games. And we know that in baseball, one-run games are fluky, right? You can be ahead by one. All it takes is one swing of the bat. When those two teams are close, anything can happen. Kind of similar in the NFL with one-score games, whatever. The Mets or the Guardians had Stephen Vogt and arguably the best bullpen of all time. They went 26 and 19. The Mets went 28 and 16. There was a lot of magic. That was the best mark in Major League Baseball. Those numbers often tend to revert back to the mean season over season. So the Mets won 89 games last year, but there was a ton of magic. Jose Iglesias coming up big in a lot of big moments. Like everything just seemed to go the Mets' way. That doesn't happen every single year. So while they did add Juan Soto, I think that this team is going to win 88 to 90 games again. That's why even at 90 and a half, I'm fully comfortable taking the under on this team because at the end of the day, to have a win total at 90 and a half or higher, that means you are the top four team in Major League Baseball. I don't think a team with this rotation should be in that conversation right now. Again, we're holding these teams to a higher standard. If the Mets' goal was to win 85 games this year, hell yeah, I'm fine with this rotation. But if we want to be the second best team in baseball to the Dodgers, and that's probably what it's going to take to win this division, I don't think the rotation has enough. But again, it's going to be a really good team.
Yeah, I mean, this team, they're going to be solid. And the
Yeah,
rotation won't be a total liability. So they're going to be good. But you could see it all working out. And they're a force as well. I think they'll be right around that 90 win total, though, too.
I agree. All right, let's before we get into the Braves, the Marlins, and the Nationals, a quick break. Bet MGM's favorite to win the National League East is the Atlanta Braves in 2025. Let's see if they are on to something. It was a season from hell last year. Everybody got injured, but they still won 89 games. They bring in Jurickson Profar in the outfield, and even without Ronald Acuna Jr. right now, the outfield looks like Michael Harris in center, Jurickson Profar in left, and Jared Kelenic in right field. The infield right now looks like Matt Olson at first, Austin Riley at third base, Ozzie Albies at second base, and Orlando Arcia at shortstop. Sean Murphy is currently nursing an injury, so one of the top prospects on the top 100. Drake Baldwin is going to get a chance at catcher to show what he's got. And then, of course, at DH, you still got the big bear in Marcell Ozuna. This bench looks a little light.
Mhm.
Chadwick Trump, Nick Allen, Brian De La Cruz, and Eli White. But even with Sean Murphy injured, this offense looks terrifying.
When you get Acuna back and you put him in that lineup, it's
Instead of Kelnick,
yeah, like
like, oh my God.
you're swapping that out. And what I love is, dude, Drake Baldwin, like you're plugging in
Breaks.
one of the best catching prospects in baseball, right there. And Murphy, though, I still think the injuries continue to be a frustrating trend. I think that's what derailed him last year. But this was just a bad luck. Like he got hit by a pitch, took it like a champ, by the way, and jogged down to first. Found out later he cracked his rib. You can't really fault him for that one. I think Murphy's one of my favorite bounce back guys this year. But the fact that you have one of the best catching prospects to just plug and play instead is great. And then if Baldwin is playing well, like you don't really need the AAA reps for him. He's developed into a good defender. He rakes. You probably have him coming off the bench as a guy that could be a great pinch hitter late in games, spot start if you need it. They're gonna probably want to just give Murphy a little bit more time off each week than maybe they have in the past just to preserve his health. That could be one of the more exciting catching tandems in baseball. But it really is all about health with this ball club. If it's healthy and that's all we can operate under, and you know, as we go into the season, this is the best offense in the division. I mean, guys were disappointing last year offensively, and banged up, and they still put up really good overall numbers. I think it's only going to be better this year.
I mean, everyone got hurt. Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, you go continue down the line. Everybody got hurt on this team, really, except for Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna. And Matt Olson even had a down year.
Yeah.
Like, that's a guy who you expect to bounce back. Of course, I didn't even mention Sean Murphy yet, who's already hurt to start the season. But this team, when healthy, like, we can't forget this Braves team last year had a 101.5 win total and were minus 250 to win the division. Them and the Dodgers were the clear two best teams in baseball. And then you strip down this entire team throughout the season. At one point, like three waiver claims were starting. I mean, there was the Ramon Laureano days. Like
Yeah.
Eli White got a ton of run. I mean, it was
was
a
rough.
grab bag of guys that they just tried to pull together, and they still made the playoffs. Like this offense is going to be prolific. Matt Olson could get right back to hitting 45 to 50 homers. Like that's still just a gut feeling of mine that he gets right back into being one of the league leaders in home runs. Austin Riley, one of the elite hitters in our league. And then now adding Jurickson Profar to the outfield once Acuna comes back. This lineup can go toe to toe with the Dodgers. They're that good.
If Acuna's all the way back and a couple guys bounce back, absolutely. And I mean, I think Profar's, I don't know if it's a 140 WRC plus, but I feel like he's going to sustain a lot of what he did. If he's a 120, you're in a really good spot where that lineup, top to bottom, really the only guy, once you get Acuna back, the only guy that you're really worried about offensively is Orlando Arcia, which it's always been the case. You put him in the 9 hole and you let him go pick it at shortstop and just hope he doesn't absolutely stink offensively. And he was really bad last year. The year before that, he was league average.
Yeah.
So if he can be anywhere between that, if he's
Yeah,
an
can he split the
85,
difference?
90 WRC plus,
Yeah.
you're fine with that. Like he was a gaping hole last year offensively with multiple other gaping holes because everybody was hurt. If he's your weakest link and he's a little bit better than he was last year, which it can't be worse. I love where they're at offensively. It's very difficult to poke a hole in this lineup.
Do you think that even if Orlando Arcia, let's say it's the same as last year, say it's a 72 WRC plus and he's playing good defense, but it's an automatic out when he comes to the plate, especially with the runners in scoring position. I remember watching Braves games last year, and whenever Arcia came up with a couple of runners on, it was like, all right, innings over if there's two outs, right? So will Nacho Alvarez get the call sooner rather than later, or do you think that he's not just quite ready yet and that it's Arcia's job kind of no matter what, unless they make a
I
trade?
I think Nacho is unfortunately more of a second slash third baseman
Mm.
now. Like I was watching, we just did the Brave system, so like that was something that I was curious of, and we just did that system on the call up and put that out on justbaseball.com. And just watching all the defensive video, I think he really is. I know he struggled because he got rushed to the big leagues, but the bat is so high floor. Like if Albies goes down, I actually really do like Nacho to be able to plug in and survive and be solid for them. But I don't think he's quick enough and rangy enough to play a good shortstop. So I do wonder if their Rule 5 pick in Christian Cairo, who I think, Fangraphs does think he might get returned, but I do wonder if Cairo is a really, really good defender, is that guy that ends up plugging in and they're hoping maybe can just be the other Arcia and be an 86 WRC plus or 90 or whatever it may be. But Cairo is an interesting addition to the conversation there. And maybe they hope Nick Allen can be something like they clearly have several irons in the fire of these types of archetypes where it's like you cannot hit very well. You are a great defender, and we'll see what happens. Maybe Nick Allen something clicks there too. But they have a few different iterations of the Orlando Arcia experience.
The last guy I want to wrap on with the Braves is the elephant in the room, and that I think is Ronald Acuna Jr. What is he going to give the Braves post his second ACL tear?
Yeah.
Because the last time he tore an ACL, we started in the 2022 season. He played 119 games. He hit 15 home runs, stole 29 bases, put up a 115 WRC plus. Then he felt a lot better, and in 2023, he goes 41-73 and puts up a 9-win season. It's not going to be that. But do you think 2022 might be in his future? And even if it is, I still think that this is the best offense in the division because they have so many other guys who are fantastic. But I think that this team can win the division even if we get a 2022 version of Ronald Acuna Jr.
I'll never count this guy out,
ever.
but 2024 before the knee issue was
Yeah.
not good. Was not good. I do wonder maybe that knee was bothering him already and then it fully gave out. Who knows? But it was weird. It was a poor start for him. And it was surprising because he was so freaking good the year before. So I mean, again, I'll never count this guy out, and I'll just chalk that up to that knee was not feeling great, and then it fully gave because he looked more like the iffy version of him coming off of the ACL tear before. So we'll see. They're obviously going to take their sweet time with him. I wish he could DH a little bit more, but when you've got the best, one of the best DHs in Major League Baseball grabbing that spot, like you're not going to take him out of the lineup. But that is the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about the health. Is he going to swipe 70 bags? I almost don't even want him to. Just go
No.
out there and mash, take bags when you can. And I think we could still absolutely see any version of Ronald Acuna that we have already seen. Like he's 27. Yes, two knee surgeries stink. Maybe he's not as much of a runner. He doesn't need to be because he can just, with the bat alone, be one of the more productive hitters in baseball. Of course, you love seeing the 60 bags or whatever, but I mean, this guy had a 90th percentile exit velocity in 2023 of 111 miles per hour. That dwarfs
Stupid.
some of the best power hitters in Major League Baseball.
I want to see 25 home runs from him this season with 20 stolen bases and fine defense. Like, I think he can be a 3.5 win player this year with those numbers, and it's still pretty damn solid. I think that's where Braves fans should probably probably expect.
Just because he might ease in a little bit. Like it's not going to
Yeah.
be like letting loose and going. It's going to be probably be a little skittish.
Yeah.
I mean, two ACL tears, man, and they were like one just when you're running in the base paths, like you got to trust everything again. And the other was trying to make a big play in the outfield. Like it's that's got to be a little traumatic for him. And so I think there might be some caution as he's getting back in there, but he could, and it being a shortened season, I think you'd be happy with that. But I think you could obviously blow that out of the water too.
Michael Harris, you got to take this outfield and run with it. It's got to be
Please.
your outfield this season. I know
Yeah,
you have Acuna. I know Profar is still there, but we've been kind of waiting on this massive Michael Harris breakout, and it could be this season.
I think it could be.
Let's start with the rotation. Still pretty damn good, even though Spencer Strider is set to return probably in May. I think that's a fine timeline as he recovers from Tommy John surgery. But you got Chris Sale at the top, coming off a Cy Young, and he was straight up diabolical. Reynaldo Lopez is coming off a 1.99 ERA, but similar kind of to David Peterson. The underlying metrics are like, you're probably more of a 3.6, 3.7, but I think Braves fans would be totally fine as long as he's just on the mound and he's pitching to a mid threes. We'll take that every day of the week. And Spencer Schwellenbach, we expect to take a big step forward.
He's the two.
I
He's the
think
two.
I think everybody in baseball is aligned on this. Like, I think even Phillies fans and Mets fans are like, yeah, Schwellenbach is the real deal. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
it last year. And I expect Grant Holmes to take a big step forward. I mean, this is a guy who has kind of been reliever, starter, spot starting, but towards the end of last season, I thought he took a big step, and I think that's going to continue in 25. And then you have Ian Anderson kind of as your time buyer until Strider comes back. Of course, you have AJ Smith Shaver as well, and maybe Hurston Waldrop can give them some innings this year.
Yeah. I think Grant Holmes, you picked him as kind of your breakout guy, right? Like I think he's already showing it. He's on his
Yeah.
way. Three shutty against the Marlins in spring training. Then he just went five shutty against the Tigers with one hit allowed and five strikeouts. Needs to eliminate the free passes a little bit, but that's never really been a huge problem for him. So I'll chalk that up more to just shaking the rust off. But he's allowed one earned run in 10 innings so far this spring training. He's going to be a solid back end arm for them. We'll see what Anderson can do, or they go to somebody else. And like you said, it's just a time buyer until you get Strider back. You could go with Elder if you want. Like there's so many other guys you could just plug in and survive for a few months. So rotation's great. I think the biggest X factor for me, actually, honestly, there's like several, but Chris Sale, like it's low hanging fruit, but he doesn't need to be Cy Young Sale, but does the velocity dip and the age kind of showing up at the end of the year and the injury he was dealing with, does that carry over into his age 36 season? In spring training, I know it's just spring training, and I'm sure because he's a vet, like a Hall of Famer, he's sandbagging it a little bit, but he's been at 93 miles per hour in the shorter spurts, and that's where he was when he wasn't feeling like himself at the end of the year. So that's my only concern. Him at 93 would still be a really solid arm, but just is he available and able to go 182 innings again? Because I think Reynaldo Lopez is going to be good, but his mid threes, like I think the Fangraphs projection of him is spot on, where he's going to regress to that mid threes. That's fine, because I think they're actually wrong on Schwellenbach. He's not going to be a 3.7. He's going to be, I think, a really, really solid arm. And then Strider, of course, what are you going to get from him? I think you can't rely on too much, but at the end of the day, when Strider's on the mound, you're going to expect him to be Spencer Strider. So I don't know. Are you concerned of Chris Sale's like age showing up here after his first healthy season in a long time where he went 182? Because I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I just left with like a weird taste in my mouth after the end of last year.
Maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I don't care. We were talking about it in the Discord, and we were talking about the National League East between the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves. And we got into a really good conversation, and they were sharing a lot of, concerns that you were. Chris Sale is going to be 36 years old. Are we sure that he can replicate it? Here's my opinion on Chris Sale. Chris Sale is a year older than Zach Wheeler. And Zach Wheeler has way more innings under his belt than Chris Sale does. And the reason for it is that Chris Sale has been injured before. And what came up last year had nothing to do with his arm, his shoulder, anything like that. It was back spasms. something that flared up towards the end of the season. Now you could say, well, he's only 93 in spring training. Do you think Chris Sale wants to be at 95 right now?
No, that's what I'm saying. I
That
think he could easily be sandbagging it. They signed Hector Neris. He's the king of sandbagging
yeah,
spring
like
training. He
I
was
just
throwing at
think
88. Like,
like I think that he's just kind of getting his arm ready. He knows that at this point in his career, there's no reason to be throwing 95 in spring training right now. So I'm looking at a Chris Sale who the strikeout stuff was there all season. He averaged 94.9 on his fastball. That's what he averaged in 2018 with the Red Sox. It looked phenomenal all season long. And then towards the tail end, when he's getting into the playoffs, when everybody else on his team got hurt, he had his first flare up of back spasms. I have no real reason to believe that he's going to take some downturn other than normal 36-year-olds who have more innings under their belt by the time they're 36 generally have a downturn.
yeah, that's fair.
Other than that, like I don't see any reason to. I'm not expecting him to pitch to a low twos again and win the Cy Young, but can he pitch to a 2.8 and finish top 7 in Cy Young? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still Chris Sale. And I don't really care about the spring training stuff because I think he's probably taking it easy.
Yeah, I don't care about that
Wasn't
too
an
much.
arm injury. I see no reason that he can't be awesome. Maybe not Cy
Yeah.
Young, but I see no reason he can't be awesome.
And I like Smith Shaver as an option to plug in. I think he may end up winning that fifth spot over Ian Anderson as that time buyer. It's been about the command for him, and that's a guy. This is a guy where in spring training you do look at the results because it's like, are you walking guys? It hasn't been too bad. He's only walked three in 8 innings, and you look at the stuff, it's looked a little bit better. That's a guy that is still just 22 years old. I think he would be my favorite to potentially grab that fifth spot if he just continues to look solid there. They also have Waldrip. They've got options, so they'll be able to survive until Strider gets back. But great chance for this rotation to still be fantastic yet again.
I mean, there is a world where this is a top 4 rotation in baseball when Strider comes back. I mean,
Yeah,
if Sale
you'd
is,
need to hit the parlay of guys pitching, healthy and youthful, but
yeah,
it's very possible.
because if Schwellenbach takes a step and Strider is 80% of what he was, and Sale is 90% of what he was, and Reynaldo Lopez is 80% of what he was, and Grant Holmes is 100% of what we think he can be, that's a reasonable outcome.
Yeah.
And that's an elite rotation
Yep.
on top of an elite offense. But I guess you could say the one not so elite unit on the Braves, but still good, is this bullpen. And of course, losing Minter is tough. Losing Joe Jimenez is really tough after getting knee surgery. Last season, I think he might be able to come back more September. Haven't really heard a lot about his timeline, but I don't think Braves fans should expect him back anytime soon. Raisel Iglesias is 35 years old, but he was
Yeah,
fantastic last
he's
year. Pierce Johnson is a good reliever. Aaron Bummer is one of the best lefty ground ball specialists in baseball. Dylan Lee put together an incredible season last year for them. They brought in Hector Neris, like you said, Daysbel Hernandez, Angel Perdomo, Buck Farmer is how Fangraph sees the bullpen shaking out. I think it's a good bullpen, not a great bullpen. What's your read?
I think it's good with a chance to be great if they hit on some younger guys here that I actually do like, and it's good timing that I again just wrote up this Brave system, and also just finished out the NL East. But Roldy Munoz, they just optioned to back to minor league camp. It's like a 70 grade fastball that he could plug in there and be ridiculous. They have a few other guys that I think could easily plug in and be solid, but they also went by kind of just volume shooting some veterans on non-roster invitees. JustBaseball.com broke the Jake Diekman signing.
Hell yeah.
So that's a guy that they
He
have
was
in the
good
fold
for
there.
the Yankees, man. He can pitch.
Who knows? Like, it's a good shot to take, right? Like, see what happens. Same with like Eniel De Los Santos. See what happens. He's had some stretches where he's been all right. But I think it's definitely the area where they're the least dominant compared to what we've talked about with some of these other options. JustBaseball.com also broke the Chad Cool signing. That was another one that just we'll see what happens. Maybe he can slider his way to success in middle relief. But I do like some of the prospects that they have. And I think Hurston Waldrip, if you put him in that bullpen and he's just throwing 99 mile an hour BBs and splitters, he could end up becoming a good high leverage arm if you don't really have a spot for him in the rotation and you want to get him up there sooner rather than later. That's a guy that I do think could fill in and be an option for them. So they have some pitching prospects that easily could jump in and be options for them in relief. But I do think Raisel Iglesias is going to continue to just be one of the more reliable closers. And I like the Neris pickup. We'll see. I think this is the biggest quote unquote liability, but this is another team that's been able to build bullpens quite well. And like Dylan Lee had a 2.11 last year. They just find a way to make it work.
I don't know what kind of brain fart I just went into. Jake Diekman was not a Yankee. I'm just thinking about Tim Hill. He was a Met last year. But
Yeah.
going to so many Mets games, they all kind of morphed into each other. But yeah, I agree with you. This bullpen has a pretty high floor, and they also have some upside potentially coming up. But it's a lot of guys who, like Dylan Lee, was that good last year. Aaron Bummer was that good last year. I mean, this bullpen finished third in ERA. So I'm saying it's not a great bullpen, but I could be underrating this bullpen. That's just how good the Braves are in 2025. That's why when we get to our predicted order of finish, spoiler alert, I'm going to pick the Braves to win this division. I think the Braves, when I did my win total predictions or projections, I had the Dodgers at the top at about 103. I had the Braves at 96. I think, and like the Phillies are next at 90. That's how much confidence I have that the Braves are clearly the second best team in baseball. They have a super high floor, but they also have tons of upside as well with young guys, and this offense is too damn good. The bullpen, and you know that Alex Anthopoulos can make moves at the deadline. If they need a high leverage reliever, if they need to go trade for an arm, if they need to go trade for a shortstop, they can do all of that because the system is good enough with MLB ready guys or even guys that are much farther off that they may not be able to trade for Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins, but they'll be in the market for pretty much everybody else at this deadline. This team's awesome, Aram. But do you
Yeah.
agree with me that they're clearly the second best team, or are you a little bit like, not clearly?
What the I think the Braves are the best team.
No, I'm saying second
Uh,
best team in all of baseball.
oh, in
Yeah,
baseball.
just to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I would say they're right there. Um, I still am a big D-backs believer, but
I love
I
it.
would say
I
the
love it.
Braves. I would say the Braves are right there. Yeah, they've got to be the second best team.
All right, let's continue to move through through this division. Going next to the Washington Nationals, coming off a 71 and 91 season. Let's look at their offense. In the infield, we got C.J. Abrams at shortstop, Luis Garcia at second base. Nathaniel Lowe is going to be their new first baseman, with their new third baseman as well, Paul DeYoung. In the outfield, we're looking at Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and Jacob Young, one of the most fun and fast and explosive outfields in baseball. And then a catcher, Kyber Ruiz, and your DH is Josh Bell. And the bench is Riley Adams, Jose Tena, Med Rosario, Alex Call. Like Alex Call is a pretty good bench piece. But when I look at this offense, the word that comes first to my mind is fun. I don't know how good they are, but they're going to be a team that I want to turn on and kind of see what's happening on a day-to-day basis in
No,
Washington.
no doubt. They definitely are watchable. Like in that I think beyond that, they're pretty intriguing.
Yeah.
The Abrams Cruz Wood trio at the top is really fun to watch. And then adding Nathaniel Lowe is just a solid, proven power bat for them is great. I loved bringing Josh Bell back. It's just a guy that, again, just a vet that you feel pretty good about giving you solid offense. Luis Garcia has turned into a really nice second baseman. This front six is solid. Like
Yeah.
this is not a like bottom of the barrel team that we've been used to seeing with the Nationals. That's a good front six. If Keeper Ruiz can be anything better, a little bit closer to the guy that we saw when they gave him the extension, that would be great. Paul DeYoung and Ahmed Rosario, I think one of those guys is going to give you league average offense. And you mentioned Jacob Young is a phenomenal defender in center field and is going to steal a ton of bags. And if that's your nine hitter, you feel pretty good about that. This is not a bad lineup at all. And if young guys take a leap, if James Wood starts to play like an all-star, if Dylan Cruz starts to settle in and become that above average guy, if CJ Abrams can prolong his really good stretches and shorten his stretches at other places, This is a guy that could absolutely be a borderline all-star type of talent for them as well. So, I mean, there is a lot of speed and dynamicism in this lineup that I think can make it fun and pesky. They can give a lot of teams a headache.
I want to look into CJ Abrams a little bit more because it's hard to fully judge him yet. Right? He's 24 years old. He got called up pretty quickly. But what I will say is the defense has not been very good. And CJ Abrams is hitting like 245 back to back years. Like that can't happen. He's not getting on base at a very high clip. He's not slugging that much. And if the defense is not coming around, I'm willing to completely throw away the gambling stuff. I remember last year he was in a casino. Like that's something that, Dave Martinez was talking about in an interview. They've completely moved past. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm just worried about what it looks like on the field moving forward. Like let's say he puts up another 2-win season and he's a 100 WRC plus guy. Last year 1.9, 107 WRC plus. Still got his 20 homers. Still got his 30 steals. And maybe that's what he is. He's a below average defender at the position who can rack up the stolen bases, maybe get you 20 home runs. But is that who CJ Abrams is for a guy who has been really high on him for a long time?
I think he's still got more in the tank. He's going to be 24 for the entirety of the season. The defense is a concern for sure. I wonder if ultimately they look to move him off of the position, but would third be that much better? I don't know. Um, it's weird because we've seen two different Abrams where like for stretches he's absolutely mashed, and then at the end of the season he just totally faded. But he did take a step forward offensively in terms of tapping into a little bit more power, getting on base at a slightly higher clip. Hopefully he can build on that. But you saw the 107 WRC plus, which was up pretty significantly from the year before, but the defense did take a step back. So I still think we're seeing him progress. He pretty much skipped what I think should have been a year and a half of minor league development. So I think you're seeing that development still being had at the big league level. I'm hoping for a 120 WRC plus and hopefully better defense. I don't feel great about that side of things, but I do think offensively he can give you a 120 this year. And if he's 20-30, that's pretty darn good.
Between the two young studs on the Nationals, of course, you could throw CJ Abrams, you could throw Luis Garcia in the list of studs, but I really want to focus on Dylan Cruz and James Wood. Question for you: higher OPS between the two this season, higher F WAR between the two of them, because those answers might be a little bit
Yeah.
different.
I think higher OPS would for sure. Higher F WAR, because I think Cruz is going to be a really good defender, and I think Wood is still progressing, but I'm still going to go Wood. I just think Wood's going to be so much better offensively that he takes it in both. But the safer pick war wise would be Cruz because he's going to get to 2 to 3 just off of his defense and speed.
But otherwise, I mean, this team finished 25th in OPS last year. I think they're going to take a big jump. I could see them even being an average offense this year, which would be, again, be a big jump for a
I think they
71
will
win
be an
team.
average offense. I really do.
So let's go on to the rotation. And this is a rotation I'm having a really tough time analyzing because there are positives about each of these young guys, and there are also negatives about each of these young guys. Mackenzie Gore is slated to be the ace. Again, command issues, but the stuff is really good. Sometimes he gives up too many home runs. It's just inconsistent, but you see the talent. Jake Irvin, talk about fading in the second half. Like in the first half, this guy looked really good. Again, a lot of extension on the mound, but just sometimes it doesn't look good. And then in spring training, I've been watching some outings and it looks really, really bad. Mitchell Parker, more command over stuff, but you see sometimes some good metrics with that fastball. Like it can get up to 95. It can be in the 17 to 18 inches of induced vertical break, that type of level. So you see some things and then you see some bad things. I remember during the Futures game, we bet against the Nationals. It was like a random weekday game. And I was like, Mitchell Parker, I think he's going to start to fade. He got ballooned. Do you remember I showed you the box score and it was like 8-0 Brewers, I think, against Mitchell Parker? And I was like, I think it's going to start to fade. And that's what happened. Michael Soroka, though, has looked really good. But again, I mean, you never know. But I'm sure you're going to praise him because, again, the stuff has looked awesome. You got Trevor Williams. Josiah Gray, I don't think is going to come back, and then you have DJ Hers potentially making an impact. Like it could be good, and it could be not so good, and I really don't have a take. I mean, I'm the takes guy. Like I usually have a firm stance on a lot of these units. Like I have no idea what the Nationals rotation is going to give us in 25.
It won't be putrid.
No, it
So
won't be.
that part's good. And addition by subtraction with no Pat Corbin.
True.
DJ Hers is still an interesting option there,
Yeah.
and you know, with what he showed last year, you hope Cade Cavalli's healthy. That would be very helpful, but I mean that's ambitious, I think, at this point. But I feel very good about Mackenzie Gore at least being what he was last year, which is still a valuable starter. I think I feel very good about Mitchell Parker being able to give you 170 innings at a 4.3 or 4.4 at worst case. Trevor Williams weirdly just gets outs. It's a
Gets
lot of
outs.
gets outs guys here,
Yeah.
but none of them are going to be great. I think that they're all going to hover around. You're going to have Gore maybe on the higher end where he can be in the 3.5s, but I think everyone else is going to hover around the 4s. But there's no like clear cut disaster, and that is nice. And then the big X factor is what do you get from Mike Soroka? If Soroka bounces back, all of a sudden looks like the older Soroka in his age 27 season, that does elevate this rotation. It's not terrible, which is nice because in the last couple of years, there's been points where it's been terrible.
Is it crazy to say that Soroka could be the number two in this rotation?
No, not at all. I think upside wise, he has more upside than anybody else in the rotation.
See the RPMs on this breaking ball that he's throwing? He's always had a good breaking ball, but I mean, holy shit. I mean, it's like him and Jackson Jobe on Pitching Ninja. It's like
Yeah.
he just threw a 9,000 RPM slider and you watch him move and you're like, "Oh my God, how is
Yeah.
that even
What?
possible?"
He struck out six Cardinals the other day. 4 innings, no run or 1 run, no walks, 6 Ks. He's pitched 7 innings so far in spring training. 1 walk, 7 Ks, 1 earned run.
I hope Mike Soroka is good.
It would be amazing.
That's just a story that you want. I mean, we can't forget he didn't win Rookie of the Year, or did he win? I remember his rookie
I don't think
season
he won,
being
but he was phenomenal out of the gate.
phenomenal, and then just injuries have bit this guy in the ass. But again, he's 27.
Yep.
Feels like he's 32, but he's
Yes.
not. So that could be a great arm for him. It's so funny. Like I'm not high on Jake Irvin, but I'm not low on Jake
Yeah, he's
Irvin.
not going to be putrid. He's going to be
I'm
better
not
than Pat Corbin.
I'm not high on Mitchell Parker, but I think he could pitch.
Yeah.
Like it's I'm not high on DJ Hers. I think he can strike some guys out, but I can see the low. I don't know. That's what's good. That's why the Nationals are going to be such a fun team to watch because you're going to get to watch an offense all day that's like you got budding stars here, and then you have pitchers. Who the hell are you? That's why I'm going to have Nationals games on a lot more than I ever have.
For sure.
Um, and then the bullpen. You know, they bring back Kyle Finnegan to be their closer. He's coming off here with 38 saves.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, really crazy. Jorge Lopez, again, is another arm who seemed to find it over there with the Cubs. Then it's like Derek Law, Jose Ferrer, Lucas Sims. Colin Poche is probably going to be a decent arm for them. Evan Reifert, Shinosuke Ogasawara. I'm not even going to attempt that.
Ogasawara?
Ogasawara. I mean, it's not going to be a good bullpen, but I don't do Nationals fans like care about their bullpen. I think what they want answered is who are the young guys that are going to help this unit.
Evan Reifert, the Rule
Evan
5 pick.
Reifert, huh?
This is one of the best sliders you're going to see. It
Is
is.
it Greg Weissert? I mean, the names kind of sound similar.
It's kind of, dude. It's one of the best sliders. Period. It is crazy, 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 crazy slider. That alone, he's going to be able to pick hitters apart. Opponents, he threw a slider 54% of the time last year, and opponents slashed 090, 177, 126 against it for a
That'll play.
304 OPS.
That'll play.
And it's been that like every year. Saw it in the fall league, and that's one of the best sliders I've seen. So that's going to play. Jose Ferrer is pretty nasty. This is not the worst bullpen ever. Like Derek Law, weirdly great year last year. Like
Yeah.
he had a 2.6 and 90 innings.
Yeah, what?
When did that happen?
I don't
Where
think
was
that-
I?
I think Fangraphs is lying. I don't remember that.
I
ever
don't
happening.
remember that at all. But Lopez was pretty solid. I don't have a ton of trust in like relying on Lopez Finnegan to close games out. But yeah, we'll see how Ogasawara is as a long man. And I love Reifert's slider. It's a fine pen. It's not disastrous, and it's been pretty disaster. The pitching staff in general is just very mediocre, and that is a good thing relative to what we've been used to over the last couple of years.
Nationals are going to be an interesting team. And it's so funny. They're one of those teams where I've been asked the most about their win total. And right now it's about 71 and a half. And I was like, I mean, I could see 68 wins. Like I see where
I
none
like
of the
the over.
pitching really shows up. The bullpen is not very good. James Wood and Dylan Cruz, you see some of the growing pains still early, and CJ Abrams is what he was last year. That's a 68 win team, most likely.
Yeah.
But the upside, I mean, this team could win 80, and I don't think I'd be surprised either.
No, I
I,
wouldn't.
I, I don't know.
They kind of remind me of some of my favorite Marlins teams, like in 08, 09, where they were in like the tail end of like a rebuild mode, but they had young, clearly budding stars mixed in a couple vets and had some pitchers overachieve, and all of a sudden you actually were hanging around 80 plus wins. I don't think that would be shocking at all.
A team built similarly to this is the Sacramento A's, Oakland A's, the
Yeah.
A's, where there's a lot of young, fun guys on offense. Pitching, you're not really sure about. Bullpen, you're not really sure about, outside, of course, Mason Miller. Who do you
Yeah.
think is better in 25, the A's or the Nationals? Because think I lean, I think I actually lean Nationals because the A's starting rotation is so bad. Like, I keep going back and forth. I could hear an argument for both. I'm curious yours.
I'm gonna go Nats because I've got more confidence in Rooker, Butler, Langlier's just consistently mashing, but that rotation has the bottom could fall out of it.
Yeah.
But and then Mason Miller in the back. I'd go A's.
Oh, I thought you said Nationals.
Did I say Nationals? I meant
Yeah.
A's. I don't know why I said that.
So you're going
I'm
with the
going
A's.
A's. Yeah,
Going
I
A's.
think the A's. I just have more confidence in Rooker, Butler, and what he's now become. Well, Day's turned into a solid center fielder. I just think they've got a little bit more proven commodities offensively. The bullpen is a little bit more proven in the back end, but the rotation, the bottom could fall out. But still, I like Severino, Springs, Beto should survive. I'd go A's.
So at Learn to Spell in our Discord has been tracking all of the bets that we have made throughout this offseason. A lot of them are between me and Jack, but I want one with you. Do you want to just make a fun one? Nationals versus
Yes,
A's. I'll take Nationals, you take A's, and we'll just
I
see.
got A's.
It's not like
Yeah.
I don't even have a real take on it. So I don't even want to bet like money or ask the YouTube comments to punish the loser. I want to see what happens. I'll
It's a
take the
gentleman's
Nats.
bet. I
Yeah,
do like the A's this year.
we'll steak dinner. How about for the
Deal.
loser in the off season? We'll just do something like that. All right. Last but probably least,
Yeah, probably
unfortunately,
at
is the
least.
Miami Marlins. We'll go through the lineup. It's going to be a lot of young, fun guys. Again, I am more excited to watch this Marlins team than last year. I swear. It's I don't know if I actually believe the take that I just said to you, but let's go through the lineup. At shortstop, you got Xavier Edwards. At third base, you got Connor Norby. At first base, you got Matt Mervis. And at second base, you got Otto Lopez. In the outfield right now, you got Dane Myers in center field. In right field, you got Jesus Sanchez. And screw it, I'm putting our guy Griffin Conine in there and left. But it's going to be a battle between him and Kyle Stowers. Shout out Kyle Stowers. I got nothing against you. It's just I want to
Yeah,
root for our guy and Griffin
yeah.
Conine.
It's not personal, Kyle.
It's not personal at all. Catcher Nick Fortes and at DH Jonah Bride with a bench that, you know, we'll see.
I think it's going to look different than that, to be honest. I think
Yeah, talk to us. Let's hype us up right
understandably,
now.
understandably so. I think roster resource has no idea what to
Yeah,
do
no
with this
idea.
team.
I mean, I don't think anybody has any idea.
Here are the locks:
Okay.
Edwards at short,
Yep.
Norby at third, Jesus in right. Mervis is a lock at first at this point.
Can
He's
we
going
lock in?
nuts.
Can we lock in Kobe Mayo at third?
I would love that. I think I don't know. The usage of Dane has been weird. I think Dane Myers ends up either on the bench or getting optioned. They just said the other day, like Clayton McCullough said, there's room for both Stowers and Conine on the roster, which to me kind of says Dane's getting optioned. Derek Hill's been really solid, and I mean they really like him for whatever reason. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. Like he's been solid for them, and I know he's a
For
great clubhouse
whatever
guy.
reason.
So I think in a I think they're going to go platoon heavy this year, and they may go all left-handed outfield when they can. They're trying Jesus Sanchez in center. We'll see. But I do think, I mean, especially after Griff's day the other day, where against Eric Fetty, he went 3 for 4 with a homer, drove in four. He's starting to really get locked in there. I think he's kind of, I'm biased, obviously, but I think he's going to win that job. And then Stowers will be kind of splitting time with him and in center with Derek Hill and or maybe Jesus Sanchez plays center. Like they're going to kind of mix and match there. But I think they're going to go very platoon heavy. So where if it's a right-handed starter, they're going to try to have a trio of outfielders that are all lefties. And then if it's a righty or and then if it's a left-handed pitcher, they're going to decide who they platoon there. But I think Conant's got to have that job. He played better at the end of last year, and he's been better in spring training. And I mean, he's got a 350x WOBA in spring training. It's been pretty good. So, and then Fortes at catcher is a lock though too.
Who's the second best player by F4 on this team? Because I think we all came to an understanding that Xavier Edwards is a real player. At
Yeah,
shortstop, he can play
they have a piece.
solid defense. He can steal bases whenever he wants to. Good player, just 25 years old. But who finishes second in F4 on this team? And the reason I'm saying F4 is like Jesus Sanchez is terrible at defense.
Otto Lopez,
Really?
he had a 2.5
Over
WAR last
Norby?
year. Yes.
Wow.
Because he can't.
Okay.
I don't think he can play. Like he's been working hard at third. He's gonna get kind of screwed on the F4 side of things. I think he can have a nice year, but Otto Lopez is just going to accumulate at second base. He was a 2.5 WAR guy last year, and he was a 91 WRC plus. But Lopez homered twice the other day. He like he actually put it together offensively in the second half of the year where he was an above average hitter. He took 20 bags. I think Otto Lopez is a high probability 3-win player just because he's such an elite defender at second and he's a guarantee for 20 bags. And if he's a 90 WRC plus, he's just going to rack it up. But I do think he's going to be better than that. So yeah, give me Otto Lopez as the number 2 in WAR on this offense.
I like that answer. Just to wrap up the offense, talk about your boy Merv. Matt Mervis comes over from the Cubs, is finally getting some runway here, and that's what we always wish for in Chicago. But for whatever reason, they were like, no, Eric Hosmer absolutely needs to platoon with Trey Mancini. We need that on our team. Like, that was fun. It should have been Mervis, but now Mervis finally gets some runway at first for the Marlins. It's big time pop.
Yeah, we'll get him on the show this year for sure. Again, but he'll say it. I don't want to speak for him, but I know he's just excited to have runway,
Yeah.
and uh, I know just having the opportunity to have the pressure kind of alleviated to a degree, and obviously the guy puts pressure on himself to succeed as much as anybody. Like he holds himself to a very high standard, but this is a dude that has been so productive in the minor leagues, has been one of the best hitters in AAA. Then it's hey, get up here for 2 weeks, and if you don't immediately hit, we're sending you back down. Like that's really tough. Nobody is getting up and succeeding immediately at the major league level. So being able to have that runway now, where he's going to be able to weather the storm of the ups and downs that is a young major league hitter, I think is definitely going to do him a lot of solid. And we're seeing him get into the power big time already in spring training. He's hit 3 laser beam home runs already. So I think that was a great addition for them. Obviously, I'm biased, but like they didn't give up anything for him, and they take a shot on a guy who's been one of the best hitters in the upper minors. I think that was a huge addition for them, just because you look at the lineup, it's like there were some guys that you just were looking as like placeholders last year. Whereas Mervis, he could be a building block that hits you 25 home runs this year if it works out, and I think that is huge for them.
I think in 40 years, if Just Baseball aren't the primary owners of the Marlins, we've done something wrong here.
Yeah,
Jack's the
yeah.
radio voice.
Please,
You
yeah,
grew up
please
with
sell
them,
us.
and you could go to any game, credentialed as you want, and you're a legend over there. And Cal Quantrill's on their team now.
Dude, they traded for my friends, and then they traded for the guy, Cal Quantrill, who
This
now I
is
have to get a tattoo.
this is our team.
this
This is
is
our
this
team.
is just baseball squad.
So the starting rotation, you got Sandy at the top, coming back from injury. I'm smiling saying that. I mean, I'm so excited to see Sandy back on the mound. But how about Ryan Weathers? Did I see
Breakout pick.
99 in spring training arm? Did I
Yeah.
see 99?
Yes.
That's real.
With Ride.
Edward Cabrera, did I see 6 earned in an inning?
Yes, please
Yes.
stop the experiment. Put him in the bullpen, or dare I say, DFA. I don't know. I can't watch this. I can't watch this anymore.
And I'm really excited to talk to you about Max Meyer, but then of course the clear ace is Cal Quantrill. So you got Quantrill at the
Is he
top,
getting
then
the opening day start against Skeens, you think?
well, think about it. Think about how good of a player you have to be a team's only big league free agent signing. They put all of their eggs in his basket.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was.
that's is that not an ace?
They could have signed Pat Corbin, and they went to Cal Quantrill
They could have
instead.
signed Max Fried, but they went Quantrill.
Yeah,
They could have signed any of these guys, but they were like, we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of Cal Quantrill. Makes all the sense in the world to me.
yeah. I'd rather have Cal Quantrill at 3 mil than Max Fried at the deal that the Yankees gave him.
By far. By far. And everybody
That's
thinks
your
I'm joking.
quote card. I'm gonna just put your words on it.
Good. By far.
Dash Aram Leighton, dash Peter Apple.
Yeah, just a collective opinion that is correct.
This is not a bad rotation. It's if anything, it actually could be pretty good. I understand that you need a lot of things to work out. Sandy Alcantara looks like Cy Young Sandy already again,
Of
and
course he does.
I think he's going to be right around
He's a
there.
fucking robot.
He legitimately is a robot,
Yeah, he's
but a
awesome.
very kind robot too.
Yeah.
Uh, Brian
Not
Weathers,
the AI bots that like terrify you when you scroll past on a reel and it's like AI bot looking at you like this and
no, he's
no,
got some human to him.
this is like ET
Yeah,
or
alien robot.
wasn't there a robot up somewhere in that movie?
Don't,
Maybe I don't remember, but
you're testing me.
it's a
But
nice robot.
he's a good robot. Weathers looks awesome now that he just ate meat all off season. Why
I
don't
like
you
that.
throw 98? He did a carnivore diet. You do a carnivore diet all the time. You don't throw
I think I
98.
could get up to 68.
Yeah. Imagine what you'd be throwing without the carnivore diet.
No.
Meyer's a fun one though. Because my biggest frustration with the Meyer profile is the fastball. Like it just was a liability. And so he has made some tweaks, lowered the release height. He's getting a little bit more carry. It's never going to be great, but if he can just mitigate it being bad, and it seems like he's able to do that. But then adding a sweeper, and just having a more distinct shapes with his breaking balls is huge because that gyro slider, it's one of the best sliders in baseball, period. We've seen that. He's dominated with it. And then you have a distinct, more horizontal shape off of that. He's mixed in a sinker. He has a changeup mixing in. He needs to be a guy that's throwing 4 or 5 pitches at you, even if 3 of them aren't great, just to take you off of the heavy slider usage, which is a great pitch. If you're one dimensional, major league hitters are going to adjust. He's not one dimensional now, and I think that's going to help. Is he going to be a frontline guy? No, but I think he can absolutely be a mid threes guy now that he has a more diverse arsenal. And then if Cal Quantrill is just an innings eater for you in the back of that rotation, that's great. That's a really solid option. And then they're going to get Yuri Perez back. Like he's going to be back in June or July, and you add him into that rotation. Of course, there's a chance you're subtracting Sandy from it, but for the sake of conversation, Sandy, Weathers, Yuri, Meyer, Quantrill is pretty darn solid.
Could it be better than the Mets?
Oh God, I'm not doing it. I'm not. I don't know, but I'm not.
Let me give you a hypothetical. Let me just give you a hypothetical. Sandy stays on the team the entire year. Yuri comes back and looks like 80% of what he did before the injury. Ryan Weathers takes a solid step and he's like a solid pitcher, not even crazy. 3.8. Max Meyer is fine. Cal Quantrill is fine. Is that better than the Mets? The Mets don't have a Sandy. The Mets, you could argue, like, Yuri's not going to eat innings, but could Yuri put up a better ERA than Clay Holmes? Absolutely, he could.
I think
Not
it
a
has
crazy take.
more upside. It has
It's
more
not a
upside.
crazy take.
No, it could happen. It could happen.
I mean, the Marlins, like, say whatever you want about the Marlins. They have been consistent in the starting pitching department.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they have a really good pitching coach. They've continued to churn out these guys. Like, this rotation traded away Jesus Luzardo and doesn't have Yuri to start the season.
And
it
doesn't have
still
Braxton Garrett.
And doesn't have Braxton Garrett, and it still doesn't look that bad.
No. No,
It's not a crazy take to say this rotation could be better than the Mets. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it could be.
It could be. There's a world, and they have Adam Major, who's still like that's a solid arm that has shown some good things. That had a little bit of a learning curve at the big league level. I don't know how Valente Bellozo gets outs, but he may be your gets outs guy. You may have to pick him
He throws
for some
89
bets
and
next year.
he throws 89 and it works.
And he's up to 92 now this spring. So now
Okay.
Marlins fans are like all jazzed up.
Is he still
But
developing?
he might be. He
He might
honestly
be
might be.
developing.
This is not a bad rotation at all. And even when they subtract, if they subtract Sandy, like they have some fun prospects. Thomas White coming up, who I think is one of the best left-handed pitching prospects in baseball, should get up by the end of the year. But having Adam Major as an alternate as well gives them some depth too. This is some fun young talent, and your old guy is Cal Quantrill at 30. It's pretty fun. So their pitching is going to keep them in ball games, and the offense is not good, but at least every fifth day there's some intrigue. Not even sorry, almost every day on the mound there's some intrigue. I hope they move Edward Cabrera to the bullpen though. I think we've seen enough at this point,
Yeah.
but you know that they're going to ride it out a little bit longer.
I think that it's always the funniest part when people talk about Edward Cabrera. It's like, have you seen how hard he throws his changeup? It's like 95. I was like, do we want that?
Yeah, it's like
Don't I
I,
want?
I don't even know if
Don't I
you
want it
want.
to be slower? Isn't it a change up? It's not like he's Duran and throwing 103.
It's
He's
just
throwing
hard and harder.
96. He's
It's
throwing
hard and
96.
harder and nowhere near the zone.
Yes.
He's the most frustrating watching baseball.
Last one, just to wrap up this rotation. Can Robbie Snelling help this team at all this year?
I'm glad you mentioned him. Absolutely. Another guy that he finished the year in double A or triple A, excuse me, had a good finish after the trade. He's another guy that high probability back end starter that it could just eat innings for you. It's another good arm. That's kind of cut from the Braxton Garrett cloth. Could be better.
Is Braxton Garrett going to help this team at all this year? Right?
No, because he was
Yeah,
internal brace in
yeah,
December. Probably
yeah,
not.
yeah. I was thinking maybe September, but yeah, probably out for the entirety of the 2025 season. But Yuri Perez will be back. Probably he got Tommy John in April, so I would say July. Is that fair?
Yeah, July's I think what they've been targeting.
Okay. So maybe Sandy will be out the door, and then Yuri Perez right back in the door. The bullpen, you know, Calvin Fauché, Jesus Tinoco, Anthony Bender, Declan Cronin, Anthony Veneziano, I mean, I'm reading names that I've never heard of. What are we thinking with this bullpen?
Fauché looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's a guy. Yeah,
He's a guy that I could see them trading at the deadline, and now that he's healthy and the stuff I was watching some just backfield live ABs, like he looked really solid. And in 53 innings, he had a 3.19, good strikeout numbers. So Tinoco was also really solid for them. Those are two guys that I think are going to be fine. Declan Cronin, like he had one of the more impressive non-home run streaks as well. I think that's another reliable guy. He runs. He's like very high up at tread while pitching. Like he's one of the like main people at Tread. I'm pretty
really.
sure. Yeah, which is just crazy to me. So that guy's gonna find a way to optimize his stuff, right? I do like Veneziano. Nardi is a guy that you're hoping can get back and get healthy and then be more like 2023 Nardi when they made the playoffs. But I have there's another guy. There's another bullpen that's just going to be rotating waiver wires, trying different players, and I mean, Peter Bendix knows how to identify some relievers, so they'll have some pieces in there, but it's there's going to be some stretches where they're experimenting with guys that stink, and that's just the nature of it. Backer, I think I think highest fastball spin rate in baseball for whatever that's worth.
That matters.
Yeah, I think it's like 2,700. It's
If
some
you're the
crazy.
highest in baseball, that
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah. So who knows? We'll try it.
Overall, what are expectations?
I think this team's better than last year. 62 and 100 last year. I think they're better this year. I think they eclipsed 65.
Hell yeah.
Um, uh, the pitching could be fun. Uh, they could hit a crazy par. Augustine Ramirez is going to get up there and catch for them a little bit at some point, who they got in the Jazz Chisholm trade. And I mean, that guy's got 30 home run juice. If he gets up there and is playing pretty well, if some of the young guys are performing a little bit better than expected. Griffin Conine putting up a 115 WRC plus,
150. Fuck it. Let's
150,
get him
winning the
way up there.
MVP.
Yeah.
um, I, this team is going to be more. We talked about the Nationals being more watchable. This is a lesser scale of that, but I think this team's a lot more watchable this year, and I think they will fight off. They will not lose 100 games. Is my prediction.
So that wraps it up. Now it's time for our predicted order of finish. How you feeling? I'll let you go first.
I'm gonna go. I already know your order, so I'm gonna go Braves, Mets, Phillies, Nationals, Marlins.
So my predicted order of finish for the National League East, I think the Braves win the division. We can't forget, team won 89 games last year, and the entire team was injured, and now they get back Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider. I got the Phillies coming in second because that rotation is just too damn good to knock them even lower. I think the offense takes a slight step back, but still one of the premier teams in Major League Baseball. Coming in third and still making the playoffs, still being a really good team, but I think they replicate that 89 win season from last year is the New York Mets. Coming in fourth is the Nationals. A fun watch, a fun offense. We'll see what we get from the starting pitching, but I think they'll be in the 75 win range. And then the Marlins coming in last. Again, sneaky, okay rotation. Some
Yeah.
fun guys on offense, but probably in the 65 win range.
Yep. That's fair. That's very fair.
But I think between the Mets and the Phillies, like I think both of us in our agreement, both of them are playoff teams. It's just one wins 91, one wins 89,
Yeah,
and it's the other way
it's
around.
literally just it's random variance being the difference, honestly, at that point. Flip a coin.
I'm pretty solidified on my playoff picture in the National League. Like I think personally, it's going to be the Dodgers, the Braves getting those first round buys. And then I think it's Phillies, Mets, D-backs in the wild card with the Cubs winning the Central. Those are
Ooh.
my six. And
Okay.
I'm
Mine'll
pretty
be a
dead
little
set on it.
different. Yeah, I'm interested. I got to dive into the Central. The Central is always just a perpetual headache of just
It
trying to
was
figure out.
fun going through it with Jack. Like
Oh my God.
it's you know, we everyone makes fun of the Centrals like, "Oh, they're nowhere near the East and the West." Like first of all, the American League Central is not in that bucket. Like the American League Central is a good division. There are four good teams in there. And the National League Central, the Cubs and the Brewers are very solid. And I think the Reds are going to be good this year. Cardinals and Pirates kind of drag them down, but
But
there
neither of
isn't,
those teams are going to be bad either, though.
no, there really isn't like a horrible division in Major League Baseball at all.
Thank goodness. Like the anti-tanking. That's the good thing is I think you have less putrid teams this year. I think it's going to be less polarizing. I do think you'll have more parity overall. I know, but the Dodgers, I understand, but generally speaking, overall, I do think there's more parity. There's less just atrocious ball clubs.
And we'll see. Like, there hasn't been a repeat winner since the Yankees in 98 and 99. I mean,
I'll
like,
take the field,
97.
man.
Yeah.
I'll take the field.
So it could be anybody's ball game. Well, we might get to our World Series predictions. For me, it might be the Braves. For you, it might
Ooh.
be the Diamondbacks. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Dodgers. So that'll do it for our division previews. Our last one, again, was the National League East today. Next week, we just got a banger list of episodes. We got the top 100 prospects. Arm, Jack, and I are going to be on there. We have a mailbag on Wednesday and then also recapping Cubs versus Dodgers. Can't forget they'll be playing that two-game series in Korea, March 18th, March 19th. I think those are the two dates. Might be 17th and 18th. It's one of those 2 days. And then we're going to do my top 100 players where I get to be Skip Bayless, Arm gets to be Shannon Sharp, and Jack gets to be Stephen A. Smith. We're combining all of them in some sort of debate show. It's going to be awesome. And then, of course, over-unders, player awards. We're getting right up to
Oh,
opening day. And in the meantime, if you want to talk with us, make sure to join the Discord. It is $5 for your first month. And that doesn't mean, oh, you only get the rest of March. Whenever you sign up, right? If you sign up March 26th, you get to April 26th. So make sure, if you are interested, joining our Discord through the link in the episode description. Again, that link is just for $5 for your first month to talk through all of this with us. And again, rate, review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to support the show, as well as subscribing, commenting, liking on YouTube, and make sure to get your Just Baseball merch. You got anything to say before we say goodbye?
yeah, so keep up with my coverage on X the next couple days. I'm going to be at Spring Breakout. I'm
Oh, yeah.
going today or I guess you would have missed today's coverage. But as you're listening to this, I'll be covering Phillies Pirates. getting my first live look at Connor Griffin. Really excited about that. But yeah, I'll be seeing a bunch of prospects, and then the backfields games are starting up and everything too. So keep up with the call up Instagram and the call up X, but also my personal as well. And then we'll be walking through all of those prospects, one at a time, as Peter mentioned, on the top 100 on the call up. But also I'll be talking about a lot of my first live looks at some of these recent draft guys, and I'm really pumped about all that too.
And I'm sure you're going to be diving even deeper into the Discord, like breaking down
Oh
all of
yeah.
these guys in
I'm
much more
sending
detail.
I'm sending a lot of video and takeaways and things like that from the backfields, which I'm really pumped about because there's sometimes I just don't have a full article worth of thoughts, but stream of consciousness stuff that I saw, like that's what the Discord's perfect for. So I'm pumped about that.
Absolutely. So make sure that you join. So for Arm Layden, I'm Peter Apple. We will see you next week. With that, thank you, everybody.